status as chiefs of the places specified respectively in relation to them. Now, therefore, in pursuance of the Provisional National Defense Council Establishment Proclamation 1981, this law is hereby made. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary, the person named in column 1 of part 1 of the schedule to this law, whose recognition as chiefs of the places specified respectively in relation to them in column 1 was withdrawn by virtue of section 3 of the Chieftaincy Amendment Act 1966, NLC Decree 112, shall, at the commencement of this law, be deemed to have been restored to the original status as chiefs of their respective places. Any person specified in part 1 of the schedule to this law, who before the commencement of this law is performing the functions of a chief by virtue of section 4 of the Chieftaincy Amendment Decree 1966, NLC Decree 112, in any place specified in column 2 of part 1 of that schedule, is hereby prohibited from purporting to exercise such functions, and it shall be unlawful for any person to treat such person as a chief. 3.1. Any person referred to in section 2 of this law, who has in his possession or custody any property belonging to the stool or skin of any of the places specified in column 2 of part 1 of the schedule to this law, shall, with the commencement of this law, surrender such property to the person named in column 1 of part 1 of that schedule and restored under section 1 of this law as chief in the place specified in relation to him in column 2 of that part. Any person referred to in section 2 of this law who occupied any palace belonging to the stool or skin of any of the places specified in column 2 of part 1 of the schedule to this law shall immediately, on the commencement of this law, vacate such palace and surrender possession thereof to the person named in column 1 of part 1 of that schedule and restored under section 1 of this law as chief in the place specified in relation to him in column 2 of that part. Any person who willfully obstructs the person authorized to take possession of any stool or skin property, refuses to vacate the palace, willfully obstructs the restoration of any stool or skin property, or contravenes any provision of this law, shall be guilty of an offense and liable on summary conviction to imprisonment for a term of not less than 3 years without the option of a fine. And then it listed the same names, so restoring the names as it is now again. So Abugra Azoka becomes Bokunaba again. And Alhaji Adam Zambio then is prohibited from becoming, from being Bokunaba. The passage of PND's Law 75 led to bloody clashes between the Mampruses and the allies and the Kusasis and the allies. Other complementary measures were implemented by the PNDC to restore law and order. They included the Boko Lands Vesting Law, PNDC Law 99, which vested all lands in the Boko district and the PNDC free from all encumbrances, and the passage of the Prohibited Organization Boko District Law 1984, PNDC Law 98, which proscribed tribal organizations in Boko. Abugrago Azoka had died before the passage of PNDC Law 75. The Kusasis then enskinned his son as Asigri Abugrago Azoka as the Bokunaba and the head chief of the Kusasi traditional area. The Constitution of Ghana, 1992, came into force with the Kusasis in place as the rulers of Boko. Asigri Abugrago Azoka was Bokunaba, and by virtue of that, he enskinned all the divisional chiefs in the Kusasi traditional area. Article 270, Clause 1 of the Constitution provides that the institution of chieftaincy, together with its traditional councils as established by customary law and usage, is hereby guaranteed. So the position of Asigri Abugra Azoka seemed to have been frozen in time by the 1992 Constitution, until one Alhaji Ibrahim Adam Zambio mounted a challenge in the present Supreme Court. This 2003 action instituted by the Mampruses before the Supreme Court, seeking to invoke its original jurisdiction, was discontinued without liberty to reapply under Article 270 and 277 of the 1992 Constitution and the Chieftaincy Restoration of Status of Chiefs Law 1983, PNDC Law 75, which had then been repealed by the Statute Law Revision Act 1996, Act 516 in 1996. On Tuesday, the 29th day of April 2003, the Supreme Court of Ghana provided what legal analysts believe to be finality to the question of the Bakwu skin. The ruling was very short and yet profound. Report says, the application to discontinue is granted, but without liberty to apply PNDC law, liberty to apply under PNDC law 75 and Article 270 and 277 of the 1992 Constitution. Cost of those days, 10 billion to the first defendant. Signed, G.K. Akwa, Justice of the Supreme Court, T.K. Aziz, Justice of the Supreme Court, S.A. Brobe, Justice of the Supreme Court, S.G. Beidou, Justice of the Supreme Court, Dr. S. Chum, Justice of the Supreme Court. Apparently, on the morning of the hearing of the matter, the plaintiffs instead sought leave to discontinue the case. The leave was granted, but the court directed that no one should come back to that court again pursuant to Articles 270 and 277 of the 1992 Constitution, the matter of the restoration of Abugrago, Azoka, and all other sub-chiefs under PNDC Law 75. Under the 1992 Constitution, the Supreme Court has final authority to make such pronouncements, and only that court can review its decisions under certain circumstances. I've gone to great length to review the history of various legal resolutions of the matter and the involvement of the various military regimes to show that this matter has traveled a long, tortuous legal and political journey. In spite of the efforts of various courts and governments, the Memphis did not give up their claims, and the Kusasi did not relent in their efforts to assert their independence and identity as a self-ruling tribe. The Nairi kept insisting that the Supreme Court has not ruled on the issues implicated in the Bakwu skin matter. Asigri Abugrago Azoka insisted that the Supreme Court gave finality to the matter. This contestation led often to extreme violence, and many people have been gruesomely killed and maimed. Property that can be easily calculated has been destroyed. Whole communities have relocated because all the buildings have been burned by various factions. The intensity of the violence did not deter either side. They dug in. Governments from PNDC to NDC-1 to MPP-1 to NDC-2 and MPP-2 have invested heavily in security and other measures with very limited success as the violence kept escalating. Within these developments, the Mamprosis in Bakwu organized a funeral for the last deposed Mamprosi chief of Bakwu, Na Tampuri Zambio, who had died in 1981, 40 years ago. The Kusasis in Bakwu had objected to the performance of the funeral on the grounds that Na Tampuri Zambio had his chieftaincy recognition withdrawn by the passage of the Chieftaincy Restoration Status of Chiefs Law 1983, PNDC Law 75. Again, the Nairi of Mampurugu on 15 February 2023 at his palace in Nalarugu purported to enskin one Mr. Seydou Abagari as Bokunaba. This generated a violent reaction in Bakwu and its environs. The government of President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo promptly issued a statement same day denying the legitimacy of that act. Government condemns developments in Nalarugu today, February 15th, 2023, concerning the purported enskinment of a new Bokunaba as illegal and a threat to national security. Government further reiterates that Naba Asugri Bugrabo Azoka is the Bokunaba, duly gazetted and a member of the National and Upper East Regional House of Chiefs. The security agencies have therefore been directed to arrest and prosecute any other person who holds himself out as Bokunaba. This statement was signed by Mr. Kojo Oponkroma as Minister for Information. The government of Nana Dankwa did not arrest Seydou Abagari. The government continued to reject as illegal what happened in Nalarugu and repeated same in another statement dated 28 October 2024 when Seydou Abagari returned to Bakwu. The statement read in part: the return to Bakwu on 24th October of Mr. Saidu Abagari, who was illegally enskined as Bakwu Naba in February 2023, subsequent to the vacation by the Court of Appeal sitting in Kumasi of the warrant for his arrest, has led to significant disturbances affecting public peace and security in the area. The government did not in any form or manner confer legitimacy on Mr. Saidu Abagari. As I indicated from the beginning, I was requested by the New Patriotic Party government to mediate in the matter. President John Dramani Mahama, who assumed office on the 7th of January, endorsed that I should proceed with finding an amicable resolution to the current situation. The parties in this dispute have willingly submitted themselves to the mediation process. The Bakwu Naba Sigiri Abugaragu Azoka has accorded me enormous respect and personally led his delegation at all times to my palace whenever invited. My brother, the Nairi, has for very good reason, sent a delegation of his elders and sub-chiefs at all times that I have requested him to come. They all express confidence in the process and believe that we will be able to work towards an amicable outcome. I started my engagement with my brother, the Nairi, by appealing to him to magnanimously recognize the position of the law that the Kusasi should rule themselves. After careful consideration, the Nairi made some concessions but gave some conditions for my consideration. Essentially, my brother, the Nairi, wanted the historical acknowledgement of his ancestral ownership of the entire land that now constitutes the Bakwu traditional area. He acknowledged that the Kusasis have come to largely occupy that area. Both Kusasis and the Mamprusis who are now occupying those lands are his children. He observed that as a result of colonial interference and interference of various governments, Kusasis have asserted self-rule and now lay claims to the chieftaincy of the area. The Kusasi claim has caused significant bloodshed between them and his Mamprusi children, and this has spread across the area and now poses a major national and international security threat. The Nairi detested that development and finds it most unfortunate that such bloodshed should occur among his children. He therefore sought an amicable compromise to end the feud and restore lasting peace. He said in part, "Be that as it may, in the interest of coexistence, peace and human dignity, my proposed solution and concessions is premised on the request from your Royal Majesty that I cede part of my jurisdiction in the Bakwu traditional area to the Kusasi tribe, with the hope that a lasting and enduring peaceful resolution of the Bakwu conflict will be achieved for all parties." The Nairi has been clear in his mind that his decision to make concessions has been a difficult one, but added that, nonetheless, guided by ancestral wisdom, commitment to peace, and respect for Your Majesty's tireless efforts, I have chosen the path of conciliation, not out of weakness, but as a testament to Mamprugu's strength, dignity, and unwavering commitment to the well-being of all communities in the Bakwu traditional area. I have been inspired by the desire and commitment of my brother, the Nairi, to bring a peaceful end to the conflict in Bakwu and its environs, and to define the best arrangements to accommodate all the different tribes and communities in the area. The Nairi outlined a set of proposals which form the basis of engagement that I have had with both sides, with the hope of finding a common ground. If a common ground emerges, it would enable them to reach an amicable resolution. With this historical understanding, I have impressed upon the Bakwu Naba Sigiri Abugaragu Azoka to acknowledge that at one time or another, the Nairi exercised traditional authority over the area that now constitute the Bakwu traditional area. I concede that colonization by the British might have played a role in the establishment of the chieftaincy institution across the area that now makes up the Kusal Traditional Council. Records has it that at various times, the Nairi enskinned the Bakwu Naba, and the latter then enskinned the various sub-chiefs in the Bakwu traditional area. It is this state of affairs that the Kusasi challenged since 1957 until PNDC Law 75 was passed in 1983. The passage of PNDC Law 75 defines the resolution of the situation in Bakwu. I have as well impressed upon my brother the Nairi that current realities make it more pragmatic that we accept Kusasi rule over the area. With the passage of PNDC Law 75, the coming into force of the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, and the ruling of the Supreme Court in Alhaji Ibrahim Adam Zambego versus Aninchema Abugrago and Attorney General, it will be untenable for anyone to hold that Sigru Abugrabo Azoka is not the Bakwu Naba and exercises jurisdiction over the entire Kusasi area. The Supreme Court shuts its doors to anyone seeking to have the matter revisited. It is important to note that PNDC Law 75 was repealed alongside several laws and enactments by the Statute Law Revision Act 1996, Act 516. The long title of the Statute Law Revision Act 1996, Act 516, which repealed the Chieftaincy Restoration Statutes of Chiefs later, Chiefs Law 1983, PNDC Law 75, among other laws and enactments as indicated above, provides as follows: an act to repeal certain statutes that are no longer applicable or have become spent. It therefore appears that the Chieftaincy Restoration Statutes of Chiefs Law 1983, PNDC Law 75, just like the other laws and enactments that were repealed by Act 316, were repealed because they had performed the purpose for which they were enacted and thus had become spent. Its repeal, therefore, did not create a vacuum, just like the other laws and enactments repealed with it. Rather, the status quo at the time of the repeal of PNDC Law 75 by Act 516 was to be maintained. Response to the Nairi's terms of concessions. In spite of the clarity of the law on the matter, I still continue to engage my brother the Nairi on the terms of concessions presented by him to me. Essentially, he asked for a number of towns in the Kusasi area to be transferred to him to Enskin. The impression created was that those towns were preferred to be under the Nairi essentially. The request was to have some of the towns brought under the jurisdiction of the Nairi. I decided to engage the chiefs of those towns. After meeting the various chiefs of the towns and communities affected by the withdrawal of recognition following the implementation of the Governor General's White Paper in 1957 on the recommendations of the Afari Committee, the withdrawal of the recognition occasioned by the NLC Decree 112 and PNDC Law 75, I have come to the conclusion that there has been significant reconciliation among the various Kusasis and Mamprusis in all the other towns. Bakwu was mentioned in the proposed terms of settlement of the Nairi as one of the towns that the Mamprusi wanted to be given to the Nairi. Unfortunately, the law as it stands now makes Asigri Aburagu Asoka the lawful chief of Bakwu, and so it is impossible legally to do any such thing in this mediation exercise. On the question of Bakwu town, I have taken the position that the established tradition since 1931 thereabout is that the person who is Bakwu Naba has the entire Kusasi area. By law and the declarations of the Supreme Court of Ghana, Asugri Abugrago Azoka is a Bakwu Naba, and there cannot be any rival residing in Bakwu claiming otherwise. I have impressed upon my brother the Nairi to accept that recognition by law in appreciation of the enduring brotherhood that has existed between our two kingdoms in order to ensure lasting peace and eliminate the national and international security threats that my brother himself is so concerned about. I have been candid with my brother the Nairi that the purported enskinment of Mr. Seydou Abagari as Bakwu Naba cannot stand. I believe my brother the Nairi has come to terms with the difficulties that will pose to achieving lasting peace, which he desires. I have, from the inception, restrained both governments from effecting the arrest of Mr. Seydou Abagari out of respect for my brother the Nairi. The final resolution of the Bakwu matters requires that Mr. Seydou Abagari be recalled to Nalerigu by the Nairi to be reassigned to play another traditional role at the Palace of the Nairi assisted by the state. Alternatively, he may choose to stay in Bakwu as an ordinary citizen of the community, but not to pose as Bokunaba. The final recommendation, Mr. President, I recommend that my brother, the Nairi, accepts the laws as presently constituting Sigri Abugrabu Azoka as the chief of Bakwu and head chief of the Kusasi traditional area. We chiefs, no matter how exalted, do not live above the Constitution of Ghana and the laws duly enacted and affirmed by the courts. Accordingly, the laws which recognizes Sigri Abugrabu Azoka must be enforced by the government of the Republic of Ghana until change in accordance with the 1992 Constitution or reviewed by the Supreme Court of Ghana. The government must enforce the laws and deal sternly with any person challenging the lawful authority of the Abugra Azoka. This is critical to the restoration and maintenance of peace in Kusasi traditional area. I wish to thank you, Mr. President, and your predecessor for reposing such confidence in me and tasking me with the mediation of this conflict with a view to finding a lasting solution. I also want to thank the Nairi and the Bokunaba for their efforts relative to this mediation process. The various chiefs or heads of various communities whom I met in the area who also participated in this endeavor deserve positive commendation. I have come to the conclusion that the path to a lasting resolution coincides with the enforcement of the current position of the law by the laws of Ghana and by the Constitution enacted in 1992 and by the position of the Supreme Court that the matter should never be litigated before it again, as Sigri Abugrago Azoka is the lawful chief of Bakwu and the paramount chief of Kusasi traditional area. He has been a member of the National House of Chiefs for about 40 years. He has been duly gazetted. His right to rule should not be disturbed, save through a judicial and constitutional recognized process, and which, as already indicated, appears, if any, a review of the pronouncement of the Supreme Court of the Republic of Ghana, stated herein. If the pronouncement of the Supreme Court appears not clear enough, remedy may be sought, if available, for clarification of the same by the Supreme Court. Either way, Bakwu and its environs will be assured of sustainable and enduring peace. Mr. President, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mr. President, I want to suggest that I was going to meet them again. We set up a mediation process where we would, reconciliation and everything, the way things have happened, where the Peace Council, and then we nominate some lawyers from their side, from each side, and others, and we form a committee to go through that. Then we start a reconciliation process. Whilst talking to them, I realized also that arms and everything were there. And all those, I spoke to them. I think we can find a way to get them to go and find a safe place for them to go and leave it. Maybe an appeasement of some 500, going, not by the government, by the National Peace Council, myself and some people, we can do that also. That I tested the pulse and I believe it can be done. So now it's up to you to implement what I have said, Mr. President. I wanted to read that because I didn't want it to come from you, for them to charge you that you've changed the report. So
please be seated, please. Shall we please give
and be able to flesh out the facts and finally come out with a recommendation. Today, I'm pleased that we have come to the end of that journey and we're embarking on the next leg of the journey. And as he himself said, this was not an arbitration. An arbitration normally will make an award on who is right and who is wrong. This was a mediation, and the next leg of the journey is to reconcile our two brothers and sisters from the Kusasi and the Mamprosi side. This conflict is not winnable militarily. No side can vanquish the other. Bakwu is important to us because it is in the extreme northeast corner of our country. And we all know what is happening just across the border from Bakwu. In all the national security reports that I receive, there is urgency put on settling and bringing peace to Bakwu so that we can safeguard our whole northern border from the terrorist armed groups that are operating in our northern neighbor, Burkina Faso. And so the end of this mediation gives us the opportunity to see what the way forward is in terms of bringing peace and calm. Bakwu has the potential to be one of the most vibrant commercial centers in our country, and indeed it has been a center of trade. And a lot of people in Bakwu have prospered, whether they are Mamprosis or they are Kusasis. Unfortunately, this conflict has turned the fortunes of Bakwu. Teachers refuse to be posted there, doctors refuse to be posted there, civil servants are leaving. We're doing national service postings, and we have suspended posting national servicemen and women to Bakwu because we cannot guarantee their safety. And so I'm pleased that Otumfuo's mediation has come to an end and that he has presented a report. And I can assure him that government would look at this report, and within the next 24 hours, government will issue a statement on its definitive position on the report. But it's my hope that the National Peace Council, the House of Chiefs, and Otumfuo himself and all the religious bodies would go the next step of continuing the engagement between the Nairi and the Bakwu Naba to ensure that we're able to bring reconciliation between the two groups. On behalf of the Vice President, Nana Pokwajima, on behalf of senior government officials, on behalf of the government and people of Ghana, I wish to thank Otumfuo for this very honorable job he has done for God and country. He has shown that he does not belong to Ashanti alone. He is a national asset. And so, Nana, I thank you very much. We've received a copy, and I'm happy that you took the decision to be transparent about it and read the report yourself. This has been covered live. The whole nation has heard you reading the report, and I'm sure that we can act on it and make sure that we bring peace to Bakwu. I thank you all very much. May God bless us all.